Welcome everybody, and thank you so much for being here with me today. As Pam said, I have Jordan with me, who is one of our policy and projects officers, and we're very excited to have the chance to speak to you today about this new work the GDC is embarking on. So as Pam said in her intro, the current standards for the dental team are 10 years old now, and we're holding a program of engagement activities to explore with our stakeholders, especially our registrants, new and better ways of setting standards and guidance. As part of this program of engagement activities, we're holding a series of online events like this one. And the idea of these events is to test our current thinking, to get feedback, and to listen to alternative ideas. We also have a dedicated website section where you can get more information on the quite detailed information we're going to go through today. But as I say, this is a very early stage of engagement. So the idea is really to share with you our thinking at the moment and get some feedback so that we can help build those into our future plans, which is a really new way of working the GDC when it comes to policy making. As well as these sessions, we've also got a survey that we've launched to help gather views. Jordan will share that link with you as well. And I'd really encourage you to take part in that survey after the event, although I'll be asking you some questions today so that we can get some of your feelings on the topic. It's really helpful also for you to be able to take some time to reflect on what you've heard today and what you've read on the website and fill out that survey. So if we can just go to the next slide, just to go through what I'm going to cover with you today. I'm going to we'll be going through a lot of information today, so I will stop along the way to give an opportunity for questions. And as Pam said, we'll try and leave some time at the end as well for questions. We're also going to consider some scenarios that'll help ground some of what we've heard in situations that you may encounter in your professional life as dental nurses. So first, I'm going to go through the background of this work and the goals we've set out for any model that we use to set our standards and guidance. I'm then going to present a model framework, which is intended to help illustrate some of our thinking around how we might set our standards going forward to allow space for that professional judgment, as Pam said. We're going to go through those scenarios. And then we've got two scenarios we'd like to go through if we get time. One is a clinical scenario and one is a non-clinical scenario, both inviting you to reflect on your professionalism. And then I'm going to go through the next step for this work and give you a bit of time to feedback as well. As I said, I'm very excited to be with you today, and thank you for giving up part of your weekend to take part. This is a really great opportunity to get your feedback at an early stage of this work and to use that feedback to inform the next stages of the work. As I said, I've got Jordan with me today, but my name is Kristen Bottrell and I am one of the policy managers at the GDC. I lead on promoting professionalism along with Ross Scales, who you might have met, who's the head of upstream, Rebecca Lucas, who's one of my policy manager colleagues, and Shiplu Meyer, who is our stakeholder engagement manager. So a very well-resourced and important piece of work. It's really fantastic from my point of view to be able to involve those who will be affected by the decisions we take in this work. And I hope that this will be evident as we move forward. I'm going to go into more detail about that, but what we hope to achieve from talking with you, our stakeholders, as we go along. But first, I wanted to provide you with a bit of context for the work we're discussing today. So the Promoting Professionalism workstream is all about getting professionals to use their knowledge, skills, and experience to make decisions that are right for the context and in the best interest of their patients. Reviewing the way that we set our standards and guidance was identified as one of the key work streams within this work package. This program also includes projects unrelated to this work, such as continuing professional development and the learning outcomes, which you will have seen out for consultation recently. You might have also seen promoting professionalism featured as a core part of our corporate strategy. This program encourages a preventative approach to regulation by giving dental professionals clarity around the expectations and obligations placed on them by their regulator, as well as confidence to use their professional judgment. In the GDC's corporate strategy 2020 to 2022, We outline plans to develop a better understanding of what professionalism means to the public. This understanding will help the GDC not only to ensure that our work around the principles supporting guidance and narrative are clear, concise, and meaningful, but also that they reflect what matters to patients and the public. These plans include identifying what's important to the public in their relationship with dental professionals and establishing and promoting a dialogue between the professions and the public to build a shared view of professionalism. The outcome of this work has been used as a basis for reviewing and developing the GDC standards and guidance. I'd just like to very quickly take you through some of the steps we've taken to get to where we are today. So there's a lot of words on this slide, but let me see if I can take you on a brief tour of it. So as I said, the GDC has been committed to working with the professions and the public to gain a better understanding of what professionalism means in dentistry. This work has been a really different way of working for the GDC, as we've worked with stakeholders from its early development and will continue to do so throughout the life cycle of this work. In the early stages, as I said, we commissioned some fascinating research into professionalism in dentistry, and this research is available on our website. I'd really encourage you to take a look at that research if you haven't already. It's really fascinating and really delves into what professionalism means to both patients and registrants. We've drawn on this research as the work has developed, and I'll be talking you through some of this initial work later on. In 2022, we began internal engagement to ensure that our thinking works with our internal processes. And we also began showing our thinking to external audiences. As we reviewed our standards and guidance, we identified guidance documents that should be updated in line with our overall approach to professionalism. One of these was the scope of practice, and as well as the GDC's guidance on indemnity and insurance and reporting matters to the GDC. These documents went out to consultation this year, and we'll be publishing our response to your feedback and the updated guidance documents shortly. All leading, of course, to what brings us here today. This project is to review the standards and guidance that we provide to registrants. And this could mean updating what we already have, or it could mean something more. We don't want to decide this without getting early feedback from dental professionals. And that's why we're talking to so many of you at this point in our journey. Next slide, please, Jordan. Now to turn our attention to the journey ahead. We understand that any change to the way we set our standards and guidance would be a big undertaking, both for us and for the professions and other stakeholders. The timescales we've set out acknowledge this and build in time to do the work necessary to have these important discussions, to hear your feedback and develop our proposals for the way forward. Before I go through these loose timescales, it's worth noting that they're entirely dependent on what we hear during these early phases, and the steps and timings may change as we chart our course through this work. It's also important to note that this program is looking at the standards we set and the guidance we provide to dental professionals. So this includes our core standards document, the standards for the dental team, or the ubiquitous silver book, as you'll know it, and all the other guidance we issue to registrants. So this includes the recent consultations that I mentioned on SOP, indemnity and reporting guidance, and also looking at the best way to provide other registrant-facing guidance on important topics such as advertising and social media. Other guidance, such as our internal FTP guidance, will of course have links to this work, but it's the subject of a separate long-running project, and you will have seen consultations go out in this area also. So the Interim Orders Committee guidance has been out recently, and you can expect to see more in the near future. I think the Practice Committee guidance is the next cab off the rank. So to provide you with some more detail on the engagement exercise that brings us all together today. In this first phase, we'll be looking at building an understanding of the goals we've set out and finding out whether you agree if these are the right ones. We'll be asking for feedback on the model we're proposing and on a principles-based approach to regulation more generally, and asking questions about whether there are alternative ways we might do this. As I mentioned earlier, this is not the only way to feed into this phase. There's more information on the website and the survey, which you can use to provide your views. And please, can I ask you, take a moment to urge you to take a look at that, and also to share it with your colleagues who may not be able to be here today. We'll then come back to you again and talk about the work we've done based on the feedback we received in this first phase, and take a look at what we would need to consider for any implementation. We'll need to understand how far any changes should go, how long it should take, and in what order we should change things. And crucially, we need to know what stakeholders would need in order to be ready, from the GDC and from others. We'll keep you updated with feedback on what we heard during the engagement exercise phases and how that's influencing our thinking. And then we'll use the information we gather during the engagement exercise to formulate our formal proposal for consultation and make plans for implementation. We'll keep talking to you throughout this process and do more work with our internal teams to make sure that we at the GDC are also ready for any change that we implement. We think this could be in 2025, but as I said, we'll keep assessing along the way depending on what we hear. We're required as one of our statutory objectives to promote and maintain proper professional standards and conduct for the professions that we register. Currently, this is achieved through the standards for the dental team, which sets the standards of conduct, performance, and ethics that govern dental professionals. The standards specify the principles and provide guidance, which apply to all members of the dental team. Many of you in this room will be very familiar with how we set the standards, but I'm going to recap the current framework. So you can see there on the screen that we have 9 core principles of practice within the standards of the dental team, 29 patient expectations, 42 standards, and 176 guidance documents. I'm sorry, I have just lost my cursor. We would like to move towards a more supportive model of regulation that encourages dental professionals to use their professional judgment rather than practicing in such a way that they're trying to avoid breaking prescriptive rules. And so if we go on to the next slide, Jordan, to explain a little bit more about principles-based regulation. This is a tried and tested measure for setting standards and providing guidance, which makes clear the standards expected of professionals whilst allowing flexibility for and encouraging the use of professional judgment, taking into account the context in order to secure the best outcomes for your patients. In the GDC context, this is the promoting professionalism work that we hope will support and empower dental professionals to use their professional knowledge, skills, and behaviour appropriate to the patient and circumstances. We also engage with other regulators, both in the healthcare sector and beyond, to understand their approaches to setting and upholding standards across different professions. As you might expect, we found a diversity of approaches, with some regulators publishing standards using a prescriptive rules-based approach, like the one we currently have, whilst others had moved to a blended model of standards and principles. Overall, there was a common trajectory to streamline or simplify and move towards models that focus on professionals delivering the right outputs, rather than on punishment for not following rules. The Professional Standards Authority, or the PSA, which is our regulator, also promotes an outcomes-focused model in their publication, Right Touch Regulation, where they say that we should avoid styles that place overly burdensome and prescriptive requirements being placed on professionals. I include this slide within the pack to show you the scale that's under consideration for any potential change. So this is the vertical line, the big vertical line you can see represents the end of the scale. So we're not looking to move towards an approach with principles that sit on their own. We've talked to people about the principles we're proposing, and I'll show you those principles later in this presentation. We've received really positive feedback, and we know that some people like this approach. However, we also know that some people will prefer the apparent clarity they get from the prescription of those really detailed standards. The model that I'll show you in the second half of this session is an attempt to mitigate some of the risks around removing some of that prescription. But this engagement exercise and talking to you and other stakeholders will tell us where we need to end up on this side of the vertical line when we formulate the formal proposals at the next stage. fact, I think I have actually bought these to a previous coffee catch-up. So we've sought feedback on them throughout the design, both through the research that I mentioned earlier and by discussing them at a variety of stakeholder events. And we've been really pleased by the positive feedback we've received so far. So the proposed principles are treat patients with respect, treat your patients with dignity and support them to make informed decisions about their care. Practice safely and effectively, use your knowledge and skills to provide the right outcome for your patients, keep up to date and speak up to protect others. Maintain trust in the profession, act with integrity and ensure your actions maintain the trust of colleagues, patients, and the public. Work in partnership with others, work with colleagues to ensure an effective and supportive environment in which the safety and well-being of the patient and the dental team is protected. We've distilled the detail of the standards of the dental team into these 4 principles that we hope would be easy for dental professionals to remember and keep at the heart of their practice and their decision-making, drawing on other guidance where necessary. These principles are designed to support professional decision-making, but as I've explained, are not intended to sit on their own, rather as part of the wider model for setting standards and guidance we're discussing today. To support dental professionals to apply the principles to their practice, the framework includes examples of how you may demonstrate each of these principles. These have been drawn from engagement and research, and we welcome feedback on the examples that have been included. The ones on the slide just for space are just the ones we've proposed under Principle 1, but if you go to the website, you'll be able to see all of the illustrative examples under each of the principles. The purpose of these examples is to support dental professionals with applying a principles-based approach and encourage a better understanding of what it means to be a professional. This, however, is a non-exhaustive list, and the examples may change over time to respond to the needs of dental professionals. Although the principles are designed to cover the core elements of what it means to be a professional in dentistry, it will still be necessary for the GDC to issue detailed and specific guidance to our registrants in certain areas. Therefore, in this example framework, we propose to include guidance where there is a legal or professional obligation for all dental professionals, a topic where no other guidance exists, or guidance for this topic does exist, but additional clarification for the regulator is required. For topics that don't meet the above criteria, we think that dental professionals should be signposted to the authoritative body on that topic or directed towards supporting materials provided by the GDC. We recognise that there's a lot of useful information currently contained within the standards for the dental team and elsewhere that doesn't meet the threshold for formal guidance, but nonetheless is a useful resource for professionalism. So if we move on to the next slide, Jordan. We believe that an effective model for standards and providing guidance should include support for dental professionals on key topics and is responsive to issues that arise in dentistry. In our model framework, we're suggesting that instead of listing this information as a set of rules, we foster an ongoing dialogue of communication with professionals using engaging formats. We believe the best way to do this is to provide supporting material on a separate section of our website, which would include information on a variety of topics, including in the form of blogs, videos, infographics, case studies, things that are really easy to engage with. The idea is that these materials can be considered as part of daily practice and implied in a way that is relevant to the context and supports that professional decision-making in the spirit of the principles. As well as issuing these materials ourselves, we can work to develop them in partnership with dental professionals and their representative bodies, who hold a lot of the knowledge, skills, and experience that can be passed on to other professionals. This reflects our ambition to support continuous improvement, learning, and reflection. As I've said, this is a new approach for the GDC, but we have previously taken this approach when producing guidance relating to good complaints handling, which is the blue leaflet that's up on the screen at the moment, and which we produced with the Profession-Wide Complaints Handling Initiative, which is a group of bodies from all across the dental landscape who handle complaints, including indemnifiers, professional organisations, system regulators, and the like. And as well with the guidance for managers and employers who are, of course, not registrants themselves and so therefore not regulated by the GDC. So this document is really intended to support them, to support you guys. there to ask the question, but rather move on. We can cover that at the end. And I'm going to ask Jordan to introduce a couple of scenarios for us to discuss today to help us think about all of that really detailed information that I've just rattled through in a practical way. Over to you, Jordan.
Thanks, Kristen, for explaining the model. As we're really thinking of new ways to explain the example framework, we wanted to really sit down and discuss with people in the profession on how this might actually work in reality. And we thought that these scenarios might be a really great tool in case studies, to use them as case studies to explain exactly how this proposed model would work. And as Kristen mentioned at the beginning, we're going to have two case studies, one that's clinical and one that's non-clinical, if I have time for that. And so we want to have a discussion about how this guidance, or really any guidance, would impact professionals on a day-to-day basis, both inside and outside of practice as they are professionals. We'd love to hear different perspectives from you all about how you might approach these scenarios that I'm about to present. And we also would love to hear more about what you would like to see from us as the DDC or organizations like the BADN when making these decisions and how this would look in your professional judgment. I'm going to stop droning on and I'll actually read the scenarios now. So this first scenario is our non-clinical situation, where a professional is going to be looking at the implications of social media. And I'll just read that off for you right now. A dental nurse is in a Facebook group for UK dental nurses. There's a thread where members are posting about difficult patients. The dental nurse is thinking about whether or not it would be appropriate to post in this thread about an interaction they had with a specific patient. And I want to open it up to the floor, if I'm allowed to, Pam, to really get some feedback from everybody in this moment of how this might work in practice.
Does anybody want to comment? I can't see everybody, so if you'd want to comment, could you just speak out, because I can't actually see everybody's photograph at the moment because of the screen sharing. So those of you who are a little bit older may remember when registration first came in, there was exactly this scenario. There was a group, this is in 2006, just before registration became mandatory. There was a group on Facebook called I'm a Dental Nurse and I Hate Patients Because, and a lot of people had posted in it. And Angie Heilman and I were speaking at a BDA conference, and a GDC staff member came to us and pointed this out, and did point out that this was not acceptable. And Angie announced this at the presentation we were giving, and I was chairing the session, so I could see across the whole floor, and I could see people, lights going on above their heads as they were thinking, oh, that's me. And people were getting their phones out and madly sort of wiping themselves off this group. It was quite not amusing, but it was as you could see it. But that was a long time ago, and it is a very definite issue, isn't it, these days? So would somebody like to give their views?
Well, so it's Jackie speaking. We see this a lot, don't we? Even now, all those many years on. Yeah. Sadly, some people using these forums are disrespecting what's going on, and I mean, it's absolutely not appropriate to post anything, in my opinion, on a UK-wide forum about patients.
What are the sorts of things, Jackie, that you think you might consider when, I mean, obviously you're saying that yourself, you wouldn't do this, but what do you think the risks are? What about this is unprofessional in your opinion?
Well, if you're mentioning patients' names, you've got a data protection breach. You've also got, your own professionalism is questionable. If you're very loose-tongued and you're quite happy to, talk about anything along these lines on a forum, you need to be able to question that person's integrity, and commitment to the profession. So I mean, I can, as Pam said, I'm one of those older persons, and I've been dental nursing for more than 40 years, or in dental nursing for more than not chair side, but so I can easily see that this is inappropriate. But my concern is newly qualified registrants who is social media, they've grown up with social media, they have a phone in their hand all the time. It's that part of their community and the way that they communicate with others. I do have some concerns still even today about whether the ease of getting caught up in something like this on a social media forum, to their detriment, really, and them not realizing that.
And what support do you think they need, Jackie, to navigate that? And where do you think that support should ideally come from? Because I agree with you that it can be challenging. It's so much part of our lives now, isn't it? It's very easy to forget perhaps the implications it might have for your professionalism.
Well, that's a big, wide open question, isn't it, that you've asked there? I mean, hopefully the education that you've had, in terms of becoming a dental nurse, let's talk about dental nurse. So, becoming a dental nurse, for example. So you would hope that the training program would have areas of professionalism in there in terms of their curriculum, which they should have. It's all about how do you control that once they've qualified, etc., etc. So it's surrounding them with people, like-minded people, and hopefully within the practice you can develop a culture within the practice. Sadly, I know that isn't always the case, but potentially it could be led by professional associations, if you like. We do always do a lot to support professionalism anyway, but you can never do enough, I don't think.
Thank you so much, Jackie. Does anyone else have any thoughts they'd like to share? Victoria's very patiently got her hand up. Sorry, I can't. And then Joan's got her actual physical hand up. So shall we go Victoria and then Joan?
Thank you for sharing that with us, Kristen. And absolutely, I mean, at the moment I'm working in education, so I work not specifically in dental. I work across health, so lots of different disciplines I'm working with currently, and sadly we do still see this scenario that largely in many cases leads to fitness to practice allegations. And I absolutely agree with Jackie in that embedding it into undergraduate education is what we do. We do lots and lots of work with students, undergraduates around this. But also I think it's about reinforcing that throughout within CPD and other forums that we're in. I think that message needs to be reinforced quite significantly still, very sadly. It does undermine public confidence. It is a reflection on integrity, and at the end of the day we should be putting patient interests first. And I just wonder, I mean, I fully appreciate that the current standards, the principles, the expectations, the guidance is extensive for dental professionals to digest. And it's that balance, isn't it, from having, a very prescriptive agenda to having something a little bit more flexible. But then is that flexibility going to result in more fitness to practice and those sorts of, I'm really interested to see how the new principles would align with fitness to practice processes and systems. So I don't know if you've got any feedback on that at the current time. I know there's lots of work going on, Kristen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I am, of course, very aware that everybody will be very interested to know how this works with fitness to practice, although this work is situated in this, we call it upstream, but what we really mean is trying to help dental professionals stay out of the pointy end of proceedings. But it will, of course, be very, very important to see how this interacts with our fitness to practice processes, because it won't be worth anything at all, actually, if it's not being applied in the spirit that we intend it to be. So we have had early discussions with our colleagues in fitness to practice about the model and how that might work, because, of course, there's no point going on this journey if it's not workable for us internally. But as we're at such an early stage of developing that model, the really intensive discussions haven't begun yet. So I'll be feeding back on that as we go through this engagement exercise. So I really hope that people join, or I hope I'm invited back, or that people join me at the workshop, because I promise I will have some more things to say about how it works in fitness to practice. I completely understand the interest that people would have in that element of the work.
Thank you. Thanks, Kristen.
Joan, and then Pretty has her hand up as well.
Yes, I mean, Jackie's absolutely right. You know, initially, sort of, it should come from their training organisations when they first start to train to qualify. But you know, a very, very useful situation is regular practice meetings, where situations like this can be reinforced. You know, especially when it comes to GDPR and, you know, patient confidentiality. I mean, they should have all signed, hopefully within their practice, a confidentiality document. They don't discuss in the pub or wherever they might be, the sort of the exercise centre or whatever, what is going on, regardless of their patients or even other members of staff. It's, you know, it's just reinforcing the rules, and especially making sure that they then don't come in front of the GDC for what they might be passing on. So yeah, and I think I say that's what I think is very important, you know, and also they can give, if they give guidance to new dental nurses actually starting, you know, within the practice or wherever they might be starting, hospital, whatever, that also helps, so they know from the start, you know, what they should and shouldn't be doing.
Thank you, Joan. That's very sensible. I like the idea of the practice meeting, so the whole dental team coming together to discuss these kinds of issues. Pretty, you've been waiting very patiently.
Yes, I have. We've seen a rise in the use of social media when it comes to all dental professionals, but especially dental nurses. There are still groups out there, and people do complain about patients, but now you've got this option of being anonymous and anonymous poster in these groups, which is fair enough. But I think dental nurses are frustrated with quite a few things, and I think they do need a safe space to be able to vent, maybe. But it has to be like, we've got the VADN. Like, I know if I've got an issue, I can go to Pam or I can go to Jackie. But again, it's about reinforcing the standards, and it's about educating the learners. I also teach dental nurses. So I do, you know, I always go for all the standards at the beginning of the course and at the end of the course as well, to make sure that they understand what is expected of them when they're qualified, when they're GDC registered. But when it comes to airing their frustrations, you know, they've got to consider, you know, being able to maintain that trust, the public being able to maintaining that trust in the profession, because all these forums, they're open to the public. And if the public can see, you know, if we're complaining about them, they're not going to feel safe, are they? They're going to lose trust in us as a profession. So, you know, if I were to have a difficult interaction with a patient, no, I wouldn't air it as a practicing dental nurse. There's no way I would. As Joan said, yes, I would probably go to my practice manager and we would discuss the case, you know, how to handle it. But yeah, it's become really hard when it comes to social media and dental nursing, especially those who are newly qualified at the moment. And I think we have to be, I wouldn't say more stringent, but they need more guidance, and to be able to sort of show them the right way how to behave, and, you know, especially in a public setting.
Yeah, thank you for those reflections. I just want to pick up on the fact that you said, Pretty, that you would go through the standards expected, and I wondered whether you're given any pause by the model that I've proposed today, or whether you have any reflections on whether the principles could be helpful in having those discussions. No, if this is a huge question, then please tell me to go away and you can provide your feedback later, but I'm just interested.
The thing is, I do like our 9 core principles, and I do like, because I've sort of grown with them. I qualified a while back, but yes, it is a huge question, so I'll probably think about it and hopefully get to email you later on about it.
Thank you very much. Jackie's put her hand back up. Jackie.
Something also to add is that I feel it's often a good reminder to share that professionalism isn't just when you're at work. I think it's easy to forget that you still need to maintain that professional approach when you're not at work. And I think it's easy when you're on your phone, later on in the evening after work, and you are, stressed from what's happened during the day. And like I said before, it is easy to get caught up in anything that goes on your phone, because you equally, have groups on there that are non-work groups, which you do act and behave in a different way within, I would imagine. So I think perhaps from a GDC's point of view is to stress again that, professionalism isn't just whilst you're at work, because you are a registrant, that carries on into your own personal life as well. And I wonder whether that message has got lost along the way.
Thank you. That's very valuable feedback, Jackie. Yes, we need to act as a professional at all times, not when we're just in the practice. That's right. Jordan, I think that you. Oh, sorry, Pam.
Could I just say, picking up on what Pretty and Jackie have said, 20 odd years ago when this happened, Facebook was quite new. But there's still the same problem today. And that is very often people don't realise that when they post something, A, it's there forever, but B, thousands of people can see it. And 20 years ago, they didn't understand it because it was quite new. But I think particularly those that have grown up with it and have always known it, sometimes get to feel quite cozy in some of these groups, and they think they're just chatting with a couple of friends, or that this is sort of. And I think perhaps one of the things we could do is going back more fundamentally and explain how Facebook works, and the fact that once you've put something up there, even if you delete it, it's still there. But the fact that thousands of people, and not only those people that are interacting with you, but there are thousands and thousands of lurkers in every group, and they might not be visible, but they are reading what you've posted. And I think perhaps sometimes a more fundamental explanation of what social media is and how it works might be helpful to explain. You might think for 2 minutes, oh, I'll just post this, but then thousands and thousands of people can see it.
Yeah, I think we would be the first to say that our social media guidance could do with a bit of an update, no matter what direction we take with the with this work, Pam. So we will certainly be having a look at that as part of this work. We do have one more scenario, but I'm not sure how promptly we need to finish, Pam. So
no, you can carry on. That's fine.
Okay, Jordan. Then let's consider our scenario.
Yes, I'm very excited. This one is also one. So this is a clinical scenario. I'll read it off very quickly. So it's about managing a patient seeking opinions from members of the dental team. And in this scenario, you have a dentist who's treating a patient who's nervous about the proposed treatment. The patient has a very large carious lesion and is given the option between a root canal and an extraction. The dentist has provided them with all of the information necessary to attain informed consent. And then the patient turns to the dental nurse before providing consent and asks them for their opinion on if this is the right treatment. I would love to hear from anybody on how you would approach this kind of situation, if there's any guidance you would get from the GDC or the BADN on how to deal with this and how you would deal with this in a practice scenario.
This is quite a good scenario, to be fair, because it steps into what I call a bit of dangerous territory, because in this sort of situation, it would be very easy for that dental nurse to forget where they are in that position within that conversation, and actually, yes, to give them their own particular opinion about what treatment they should have. But they are not trained to do that. And particularly if you feel connected with your patient, you know, you might have a long history with your patient, seeing them regularly for checkups or for treatment, and also, you know, within some practices, obviously dental nurses go on and attain additional qualifications for extended duties, and they may momentarily forget that, you know, oh, okay, they have all this extra knowledge, and that you know, they can carry out all these extra treatments and provide, you know, take radiographs and take impressions and things like that. But they still need to remember that they're not trained to be able to provide to prescribe treatment, so which is effectively what they would be caught up in doing. And I think it's a very good question to ask, to be fair, and to you. I don't know what others think.
So yeah, I do think it would be very easy. And again, you know, it's being drawn into that situation, a bit like the social media one. If you're sitting comfortably on your sofa, you know, in the evening after work, it's very easy to forget exactly what position you hold and where you should be standing. And I think this is a very good point to test that personally.
It's interesting, Jackie, because this scenario came from one of our clinical dental advisors who is a dentist, talking about how his patients often felt that relationship you're talking about with their dental nurses. He or she might have been the constant in all of their treatment at the practice. You know, they might see lots of different dentists, but they might know the dental nurse very well. But I'm sorry, I spoke over you. You're about to make another point.
No, it's absolutely fine. I think a dental nurse does build up a relationship with patients, and patients do feel like they want to ask them for advice. I can really see that happening. But it's again, you know, the strength of that the dental nurse and the knowledge that they have and the experience that they have behind them. And this is where it would be very easy for a newly qualified dental nurse to actually fall foul of their registration abilities.
Do you think that there might be a role, though, for the dental nurse to play here if the patient is feeling nervous? Is there, you know, I think dental nurses do have some specific skill sets, don't they? You know, one of these aspects of professionalism and the principles we're thinking about, you know, about treating patients with respect, etc. You know, perhaps the dental nurse can contribute to this scenario.
Yes, absolutely, they can, but obviously they need to keep within the boundaries of what's been said. They can't add anything to what has been provided. You know, it's a case of suggesting to them that they've had all the options provided to them, all about informed decisions. And, you know, as a registrant themselves, if they're, you know, speaking, you know, it's a case of, you know, it's perhaps explaining, if you like, what would be going on at each of those treatments, you know, to help reassure them if they were anxious, but talking, you know, with the clinician about whether or not there would be any option for sedation or anything like that. So, you know, you might want to provide that type of thing, but you wouldn't really be commenting on whether or not these treatments or anything else would be provided for them, because, you know, we haven't looked inside that patient's mouth and we're not trained to, you know, prescribe treatments. So
thank you very much. And does anyone else have any thoughts on this scenario?
Actually, I agree with Jackie. We have to be very careful. Sometimes we get a bit too confident. There's nothing wrong with being confident in your own skills and abilities, but if you've been an experienced dental nurse and someone asks you about your opinion, you are tempted, especially if you've built this trusted relationship with a patient over a long period of time. But I think, I mean, this has happened to myself, you know, when the patient turns around and asks me actually, you know, Preeti, what do you think? And I've got a good relationship with my dentist, and I think my dentist is absolutely amazing because he prepares the treatment plans, he's got the pictures on there, everything in writing. So, you know, I do tend to bring up the treatment plan and actually go through it with them. So I'm not actually giving them my opinion, but I'm just giving them, like, explaining the options to them, like going through the pictures. And if there's anything I'm not sure of, I always tell them, I'll tell John about it and I'll convey your message and I'll arrange for him to call you back, you know, because they know they can trust both of us, they can trust the team as well. So I am very well aware, like, what I can do and I cannot do. And again, it's very important to remind nurses about what their scope of practice is.
Yes, I would certainly agree with Preeti. I would certainly step in and say, if it were mine, with view to your clinical situation, yes, I would certainly give an opinion.
Do you want to say more, Sue?
No, it's just patients, as you said, patients have a relationship with the dental nurse.
Yeah, absolutely. And that trust is important, isn't it? So as your colleagues have said, within their, you know, within their scope and their training and their abilities, certainly,
Exactly,
I think that
yes.
there's no
Yes.
problem with the dental nurse giving his or her opinion in this scenario. I mean, one of the things that the dental nurse might want to think about is, you know, one of the principles we've set out is working with the dental team. So thinking about not wishing to, of course, undermine the dentist, who is the one that will be prescribing the treatment, but thinking about the way they can use their particular skill set to kind of calm this nervous patient, perhaps, who trusts the dental nurse.
Yes, exactly, yes.
Fabulous. Any other thoughts before I move on and let you know what the next steps will be in this work? No, given that we've run over time, I might then move on just to say thank you very much for giving me the time and the space here today to discuss this important work with you. I hope you found it as interesting as as useful as we have. So just to remind you, we've gone through the background of the work and the goals we've laid out for any future model of setting standards and providing guidance for dental professionals. I took you through the model framework we developed as an example of how we might move forward. A case study or two case studies today exploring how standards and guidance are used. And I'm going to end today with a plea to have a look at that dedicated website section and to complete our survey. So Jordan and I have been busy making notes of your comments today, and thank you for those, but please do take a few minutes to access the survey and provide some feedback there. The reason I say that is because we do appreciate that this is very complicated and overwhelming, potentially, information. So take some time to have a read of that and some reflecting. I'm also going to put on the next slide our email address, so you can email Jordan and I directly as well, and we'll have a look at that also. But as I mentioned at the start of this presentation, we'll be using all of this feedback that we gather to build our proposals and to make our plans. And again, thank you very much for your time today. I look forward to continuing this discussion with you as we move through the work.